Hey Resonator family, good evening. My name is Jerry Smith. I just want to let you know I just finished up video number 2, which is Marc Lee Shannon. This was a great interview just like Eric's. Marc told us a little bit about how he got started as a kid, evolved into music, moved to LA. There's a lot of great stories that you're going to hear from Marc. My favorite part of it all was the big gift that Michael gave him at the end of the video. So join us for video number 2 coming at you now. Marc Lee Shannon, how are we doing today, sir?
So far so good, you know what I mean? Thank you for you guys having me here today.
We'd like to thank you for taking the time today. We know you have a really busy schedule. You know, you're one of the busiest musicians right now since the pandemic has ended. But thank you so much for taking the time for us, Resonator family, your fans, and everybody out there wanting to know what's going on.
It's important, I mean, you know, staying connected for all of us as, you know, fans and band and musicians. I mean, that's how we stay alive, you know, because without that, you know, what are we doing? We all feel such a great sense of change.
Right, and it's been a rough change.
Everything has changed, you know, so we're trying to just stay together. It's kind of hard, you know, but you know, things are looking up, you know, we're getting through it, and you know, I'm really just happy to be here to talk to you guys. So.
We're happy that you are here with us. So let's get started.
Okay.
Marc Lee Shannon, as a young kid, as a young boy, where did you grow up at?
So I'm from Akron, Ohio. I grew up on the west side of Akron, and there were two things that were important to me growing up: sports and music. You know, I can just remember from the earliest times listening to 45s and this music on a little close and play turntable. That music was always super important to me, as was, you know, playing sports. I just wanted, whatever season it was, I just wanted to do it.
How old were you when you heard music for the first time and went, I think I'm digging this?
Well, my dad was in the music business, so he worked for a jobber back then, the people that used to be distributors that would, you know, help like Clarkins or whatever get music. So there was always music around my house. And I think around 68 or 69, he got to work for Capitol Records. In those days, the regional labels had regional offices in Cleveland because, and a lot of people don't know this, but during the 70s, there were more records sold per capita in Northeast Ohio than just about anywhere else in the United States. And so in this market, you really had to have a focus. So that's why they said in those days, if you were gonna break a band, you had to come to Cleveland. And we don't think about it so much, but because we all grew up with such a rich history of bands and concerts, Blossom, all the venues here. But that was because everybody needed to play here. And it was really super important to break your record here because people bought records here. It was super important.
So what was the thing that made you decide not to even pick up an instrument, but what band as a kid that started to influence you immediately?
Probably the Beatles. I mean, because my dad worked for Capitol, there was always a lot of Beatles stuff going around, the solo stuff and all the, you know, and that to me was just always, you know, I think it's been said that when you were growing up, you were either Beatles or a Stones guy. Yeah. I was a Beatles guy, you know, and then later I became a Stones guy. But at first it was really the Beatles and all the Capitol acts from those days.
You know what's crazy is Eric said the same thing, the Beatles were an influence. Of the Beatles, who was your favorite?
I like Paul McCartney.
Same with Eric.
John was too hard to me, he was too intellectual. And Paul was just the guy that you always wanted to be like because he could sing really well. Yeah. He wrote a lot of different songs with a lot of different melodies. And George Harrison also was the guitar player. I mean, I didn't know what he was doing, but I knew that he was really good at it because he really was an extraordinary guitarist for a pop band.
So as a kid, was the guitar the first instrument that you went after?
Drums. First thing I wanted was a drum kit, and I think I was probably 8 or 9 when I got one of those, you know, Montgomery Ward, they were out in the big box, broke it the same day, kind of thing.
Right, just beat it a couple times.
What happened there? And of course, no one wants to hear anybody practice drums.
Right.
So that was like, oh, let's go in the basement.
Did they put you in the basement?
I broke it right away, but my older brother had a guitar, and it was an audition from Woolworths, and he played it, and then he didn't play it, and then I remember I picked the locks, because he had locked it and lost the key, so I got a screwdriver and just went, and I still remember that guitar. That was an audition, Sunburst. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So About what age did you actually start taking the guitar serious?
Probably 14, 15, because I had played sports, but I was that kid that always had to work really hard to be on the team. And, you know, I actually worked so hard at it that I actually was, in 8th grade, part of a really, really good basketball team, and we were recruited to high schools. But I think that was about as good as I ever was going to be, because when I got to high school, it was a whole different gig, you know. And music was so important then, you know. So there was like a division for me of, I think I got hurt one time, and I was at the end of sitting on the end of the bench, you know, with a great big knee brace on, thinking,
oh man,
you know, I kept thinking to myself, the best you're ever going to do is sit right here on the bench. And I thought, you know, maybe music.
That's pretty tough as a kid.
So it was junior year for me where I really stopped playing sports and just did music and focused 100% on music. And that was what I did. I worked at a record store and went to a Catholic high school, so I was like...
What record store did you work for?
I worked at Record Theater at those times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Record Theater had a bunch of stores in the 70s in Akron, and I think I worked at Summit Mall there. I worked at the one over at Fairlawn Plaza, and I opened up a store on Talmadge Avenue. But that was all I did, is worked at a record store, played gigs in a rock band, and practice guitar.
Did you do any band in school at all?
No, I didn't have any formal music training until I went to college, and I had to jam to get ready to go to college. I got accepted to a school in LA then it was called the Guitar Institute. It was run by the guys who are in that film, The Wrecking Crew. So guys like Tommy Tedesco, Howard Roberts, all those guys were the teachers. So when I got there, I was really behind the 8 ball, because a lot of guys had gone to regular music school.
Yeah.
So they were really trained, and I was just Cleveland raw, you know?
Yeah.
But
how old were you?
I think I went to school there, I was 20 years old. I moved to LA when I was 20 years old.
So from a kid to before you left for LA, did you try to put any bands together?
So I had my first record deal right out of high school. It was a development deal.
Wow.
Back then, what record labels used to do is they would give you several $1,000s to go into the studio and see what you could do, right? Because, you know, the home studios weren't happening then.
Yeah.
And, you know, nothing came of it. There's a funny story, which I won't tell our listeners, but it had to do with having some money from a record label and then not having some money from a record label. And my A&R guy's name was Richard, and his nickname was Snake, and I thought it was funny. Anyway, so that happened, but I got accepted into school, and I was always playing and singing and playing and writing, you know, so, and I really wanted to be good at it. I really wanted to be trained as a musician. So I went to school out there and continued my education. In those days, you could go to junior college in LA for free. All you had to do was just sign up, pay for your books. So I got a couple years of junior college and also, but I just wanted to study music and composition and theory and harmony and read music really well.
Were you one of those kids that wrote poems and everything as a kid?
Yeah, I always did. I always was like the dude that wrote poems.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I was always painfully shy. I would never like a girl unless I was absolutely sure she liked me. I mean, I had to be like 100%. I'd like ask 6 people, like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I would never, ever make the first move. It just, I didn't have the confidence growing up as a kid to do that.
But you know, most musicians as a kid, when you speak to them, one of the things that you have in common with them is shyness.
Yeah. We, you know,
I was a rock and roller who wants to be on stage, and we'll get in more in the interview this, but you know, as a kid, you think to yourself, man, I want to be a rock and roller, man, because I want to get with the girls, you know?
It was never about that. It was never, I mean, anybody that says they didn't want to be in a band to get the attraction of girls probably isn't being honest.
Yeah.
But if you get into it, it's the skill of being able to play and hanging out with the badasses, you know, the guys that had gigs and had guitars and were so cool. You found a tribe, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I found for the first time ever, I mean, I did certainly in sports, but for me, the tribe of musicians and creative people and artists, it was pretty resonant with me right away. Like, oh, this is my home, right? These are my people, right? So I always wanted to be around them. And when I got to LA, you know, I eventually worked really hard. I was lucky because I could play and I could sing and I could read music and I could write music. So I got work right away, and I was working, doing a lot of different things, playing with a lot of different people. And a lot of people that went on to be famous and did a lot of records, probably did 100 records out there. But
can you give us one band? That,
well, I mean, bands that probably aren't.
I'm not asking you to name drop. I'm just saying, can you give us some?
I remember I worked with Dwight Yoakam for a small amount of time before he was Dwight Yoakam.
Yeah.
But it was just a bar band, and I left his band for a band that paid $10 more a night because I went from $40 to $50 a night. I thought I was moving up, But everybody was just kicking around in LA then, and there was a lot of nobodies that became somebodies. It took time, and so I mean there was just a lot of people that have come and gone that I've played with. I was in a group, played with a group called the Rave Ups. We're in CBS Records. Did some short touring with them, and just a lot of different stuff, and just made records. Had some money, didn't have any money. Made some records.
LA's a tough town, man.
Everybody's good. Good as there's aliens out there that are in the music business, and that's how good they are.
So my question would be, as a kid, when you were getting going with the guitar and all that, at any time you sitting in your room, did your parents ever go, shut that thing off?
No, my parents were divorced, and I lived with my dad, and growing up with my dad was much more like, there wasn't a lot of parenting going on. It was like you're on your own. And so I took care of myself.
Which helps you become an independent child.
I tell single people right now, it's like, I know how to cook, I can clean, I can do laundry, I'm a great deal on a used car. But no, I took care of myself a lot when I was growing up. I was alone a lot, which, at the time I didn't like it, but eventually it really worked out for me because I practiced a lot. And make no bones about it. People say, well, how do you get talented? Talent is hard work. You know what I mean? When everybody else is out partying, you're practicing. People say, how do you play so good? Well, because I spent all week working on this stuff. You know what I mean? Man, so it's there's a lot of that goes on.
I had a friend, or I have a friend that knows Danny Powers, and he said the same thing you just said. He goes, they would used to invite Danny Powers. They went to school together, graduated together. And Danny would rather stay at home and practice his guitar and be in his band than go out on a Friday night.
Well, especially with the Resonators, because we didn't rehearse. There was no rehearsals. Sound check was it. And when you got to sound check, you better have it all together. Your part, your sound, your rig, your vibe, your look. There wasn't any question. I understand it's a lot like Bruce Springsteen's band. It's like you got to be ready for anything at any time. And that's what Michael expected from us. And you better be the guy because you didn't want to be the guy.
Now, did LA teach you to be prepared for that stuff? Or you knew?
Sure. It helped that I could read music. It helped that I could write music because for me, whenever there would be like, hey, we're going to do this, going to do this. And the way it would come across is we would get a set list about a week to 10 days before the gig.
Oh, wow.
I would build a little playlist, right? I would go through if there's anything like, okay, I'm playing mandolin on this, I'm playing 12-string on this. And a lot of it for me was because I was swinging so many different instruments. It was getting the instruments together, getting the gear together, the tool balance, and God help you if you're the guy whose gear doesn't work on stage, because then you're the guy. And the rule was, don't be the guy. Don't be the guy that sticks out. So for me, it was different, I think, because I had so many different instruments to play. I was always switching instruments.
So let's go from you get done with being here in Ohio, you go to Los Angeles. Guitar is your choice of instrument. Your first actual live gig, when you were in?
So my first live gig was probably 8th or 9th grade, so
wow.
I was playing pretty quickly with a band of, little misfit kids with them, all plugging into the same amp. And, at some gig where, somebody's birthday party, you know what I mean? We'd get up and play and charge them $50 or something like that, but no, I wanted to play in front of people right away because that was where the
you
fun
knew
was.
You had that passion immediately.
Right away. It's just, it wasn't so much about playing for the people to get attention as was just like, I want to play music. I like this. This is what I like. And I think it's lost a little bit in today's times just how important, concerts and music I mean, at schools, that was the social fabric of the time, is you went to school dances, you saw a band. You went out to see a band at Kent. You went out to see a band later on, that was playing at a hotel. Everywhere you went in Northeast Ohio, there were bands playing, and they were all so good. This was a hotbed of really good musicians here.
It's crazy. You look back on those times and how much you guys, your talent, your era of musicians, how much you guys really did stay home and practice or go to a friend's house and practice.
That's all we did.
And if you could give kids watching this any kind of advice right now with that kind of...
It's different for them because their tools for creativity are different. I watch, my kids are really into the creative dynamics of competitive gaming, right? Or skateboarding. And they approach it the same way I approach the guitar. It's their deal, it's their vibe. I mean, my son he was always talking about his board, his trucks. I mean, that's the same way I was always about my gear, my amps. It's an era that's really kind of passed by because there's more distraction now. There's more there. More things to get into.
So you're out in LA, you're doing your thing, you're becoming Marc Lee Shannon.
Right.
Tell us about your first real, actual paid gig that you were like.
Well, I mean, my first gig was I was still in school and no one was working from that school, and I got a call. Can you play guitar and sing and show up at this gig? And I was like, yeah. What song? Yeah, I can play. Because I had been playing. So all I had to do was do what I already knew how to do. And I remember the guys that lived in my little apartment complex, which was right across from Hollywood High School, right down from Drums Theater, were a little bit surprised. They're like, you have a gig? You're working? I'm like, yeah, because I could sing, I could play, and I knew how to put on the dress, so to speak, to go and work, to play cover music, and I had done it. So it wasn't a big transition for me. And one of the first things I got into when I was in school was probably one of the best top 40 bands I've ever been in my life, which had singers, horns. Like, we did a lot of dance stuff, we did a lot of Zeppelin stuff. We worked all the time, and I was making really decent money on those gigs in those days. And I remember my roommates were like looking at me sideways because like, how do you do that? I'm like, well, I may not be able to do all that jazz improvisation that you can do and read those difficult, charts, but I can play.
Do you remember how much you made that night?
I think I was making that night probably was like $50 or something like that.
What did you do with that $50?
Probably went right away and bought food.
Did you?
Because I was on that musician's diet then. I weighed 140 pounds, and I probably was like, that diet those days was nothing all day, nothing all night, same thing tomorrow. Or maybe a piece of cake. You know what I mean? But I was always solvent because I always worked as an artist. I've never missed a rent payment. I've never missed a bill payment. I've always worked, and in those 10 years I was in LA, I don't think I did anything else except teach and play music. So
the crazy thing with LA, and I think you will agree, everybody has this idea how LA should be. You're gonna load up your car with your instruments. You're gonna go there, and you're gonna make it big overnight. And every band says that, I made it big overnight. It only took 40 years, but I made it.
Right.
Because everybody wanted to go to the Roxy or the Troubadour or something.
Trust me, the first night I was there for school, the first night I got my apartment, they assigned us roommates, we all decided to go out, we went down to the Starwood. Now this is the first night I'm probably 20 years old, and I just turned 20. And we went down to the Starwood. It cost $5 to get in, which is exactly how much money I had.
Oh,
right?
Man.
And that night it was a band called Quiet Riot playing with Kevin Dubrow and Randy Rhoads on guitar.
Wow.
He was the first guitar player I saw in LA, and he was, he had the great guitars, the little polka dot outfit, the whole thing. He was just ripping, and I'm thinking, this is a club musician? And I remember thinking that night, you've made a serious mistake here. But I was already locked in. I had paid my tuition. I was locked in, and I just thought, holy crap, what did I get myself into?
But wasn't the whole scene like that in LA though? Every club that you went to, it had guys
just
like
being good was average. And when you see a great band around here or someplace, you know, you take that band and you transplant it into that era of those times. You know, you just, you know, everybody came from all over. Somebody told me once it was sort of like playing college football and then going to the pros.
Yeah.
It was like, holy moly. Everybody's not just good, everybody is great here, you know.
Yeah.
And so in order to stick out, it took a lot of really hard work and perseverance. And I never got to the A team, but I kicked around in the B movie club for a long time and made a living. I never made a fortune out there, but I was always working, doing sessions, doing gigs. I mean, on Monday night it would be at an Italian restaurant. On Tuesday night it would be the Palomino Club.
Right,
on Wednesday
right.
night it'd be some bar in Reseda. On Thursday night it'd be an original showcase at Madame Wong's. On Friday night maybe, and that you were working every night and every day you were practicing, getting ready for the next gig, you know. And meanwhile I did other jobs when I was out there. I did a lot of live sound location stuff. I was the guy with the boom op, and you know, I could work 2 or 3 gigs a month and pay for my whole rent doing that in the movie business. So I didn't really want to do that because it took me away from what I wanted to do, but it paid. So I did that. You know,
Okay, so you're in LA.
I'm in LA.
You have In-N-Out Burger.
Oh my God.
You have Tommy's.
Oh my God.
You have Whataburger.
Oh my God.
You got to choose
You
one.
know
of them.
Tommy's, that's amazing.
Yeah. Tommy's
I'm
really.
impressed, brother.
Yeah, Tommy's is really.
Tommy's is impressing me because they get the sack of fries with the Lowry season salt. And then you had places like Los Burritos and different, you know, all the Noggles, all the great, you know, places. But what I missed the most about the food there was the strip mall mamacita restaurants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're everywhere, you know. And you go in there and there'd be some abuelita in the background doing tortillas, looking at you, giving you a dirty look, like, what are you doing here? You know what I mean?
And the food would be
Making
fantastic.
tortillas, you know what I mean? And you know, because I had some Spanish then, and they'd look at you like gringo. Just speak English.
Right.
Right, you know. But I miss the strip mall food. I do. It was really good.
All the food out there, people don't realize it's fantastic. It's really mom and pops at.
There are still mom and pops.
Yeah.
Tons of mom and pops out there. Yeah.
So would Tommy's be your favorite or In-N-Out?
Tommy burgers were great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you could get them with the chili and the spoon. And
I was just going to tell you, I got a burger there, and I asked for everything on it, which I should have never done
my
because I
God,
didn't.
yeah.
He put chili on the burger, he put fries
They
on
give you a
it.
spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's great. And then there's In-N-Out, which is like legendary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those are all just really, I mean, you know, you can't eat that stuff every day, but man, it's just fantastic. It's fantastic.
What's the number one thing you miss about LA?
What I miss about LA is on any night of the week when I was there, you could go down to some club where I was well known as a musician, and you could get in and you'd see somebody that would just blow you away.
Yeah.
Every night of the week, somebody's talent was just so outstanding. They're writing, they're performing, they're creative, and you really was a training ground of being able to say. And the other side of it was you got to see a level of this is really what's good.
Yeah.
When you grow up locally, sometimes you can, you know, get that little soft, comfortable feeling like, hey, I'm really happening here in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. But the reality of what it really takes, the amount of hard work it takes, and dedication, and just commitment and work, really you see when you get to LA, you get to Nashville, you get to New York, and you see those people, and it's like, okay, I see how hard you have to work. Because there's no bones about it. Yes, talent's important. Talent is hard work. It's hard work. Showing up, doing it.
Of everybody that you either performed with in LA or been around or met in the music industry in LA, who's somebody that sticks out to you that you could pick the phone up, or you wish you could pick the phone up and go, hey man, it was fun?
You know, there's a lot of people I played with, but unfortunately, at that level in the music business, it's very competitive.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, when the business was done with the band, the friendship was done. And that was the name of the game out there. Now, keep in mind, everybody was looking for the same prize. So it was really, really competitive. Right. But as far as friends go, I still do have a few. But, you know, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
And I feel much closer to my Ohio family. You know, my LA family will tell you, Marc Lee had to move back home to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I was out there, it was really a testing ground. It was training ground for me.
Wow.
And then I came back here and I kind of stepped out of the full-time thing and went to work in a corporate job and raised a family. And I was still working on the weekends. I got, I'm sure you probably want to know how I got with Michael, right? Okay.
I'm going to move into that next.
Okay, cool.
So this is what I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
You're in LA, you're hearing stories back in Ohio, Michael Stanley Band.
Couldn't have been happier for him.
You know, he's selling out Blossom, Coliseums, all
When we
that
saw
stuff.
He Can't Love You on MTV, you know, what people don't realize is
Yeah.
He Can't Love You was one of the very first 45 videos that was in heavy rotation of MTV. The very first. So when we were watching MTV in LA, you know, I just kept thinking, bravo, man, bravo.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I had first seen Michael Stanley when I was 17 at the Akron Civic Theater. And Billy Joel was opening for him. And Michael and Kaz had the twin reverb amps, and he was playing Show on the Road. And that was such a magical night. And I thought to myself, this guy's really making it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, little would I ever have imagined that 45 years later I'd be standing on that stage with him.
How did you meet Michael?
So, Michael, I met through my old boss at Audio Technica, because I had gotten to work for them, and they needed a guitar part that was kind of like, you know, and my boss knew that I'd been in those bands and played a lot of funk and stuff and done a lot of sessions in LA. And he said, can you come on, we'll put this part and play on this record. So I got the call, and it was a summer day around this time of year in 1995, probably a little earlier, August. And, you know, I didn't know Michael, you know, so I didn't know how to look hip or what to dress.
Right.
So I just wore a really nice suit jacket and some slacks and some, you know, pants. And, you know, I walked in and he looked at me like, what? Because I didn't look hip. Right?
Yeah.
But I had an old guitar, an old Telecaster. And he saw that. You know, he figured, like, he said to me, it was the guys with the old guitar cases. You know, so I walked in and they plugged in this track. It was called Complicated. It was the first song I played on Coming Up From Air.
Wow.
And I understand I was one of the last things recorded for that record, because they were already, Bob was in the corner, he was all passed out. And so I was tracking with Michael. He was very friendly to me. And we sat down, and I remember it very clearly. He played me a thing, plugged me in. I was plugged into a Rockman or something like that. And I said, roll it. I'm going to put a little sauce on it. He went, oh, Sauce Man.
That's how, that was
how
all
he
my questions.
called me the Sauce Man, because I had the first session, and it went really fast,
Wow.
really good, and we just hit it off. And then when he did his record release, he called Monty, because Monty was mixing my blues band, the Top Cats. And he said to Monty, he said, can this guy rock? Can he rock? And Monty's like, oh yeah, he can rock, man. You know, and I went out to see him when they played their last Blossom show, but I didn't get to talk to him. I was leaving, he went, hey, but I didn't talk to him. Bob was like, hey. And so I got the call to do the show at the Odeon, which was the record release. And he just kept calling after that. And,
Wow.
And it was probably one of the luckiest breaks of my musical life.
You know, and that's what any musician strives for. You're in LA, you're doing all that hard work to try to get where you're at. You know, and the reality of it, Michael Stanley is one of the biggest names coming out of Cleveland.
I had given up though, Jerry. I mean, I at this point I was in a family. I'm like, okay, great, if something happens. And then, you know, getting the gig with Michael, everybody was so excited. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? Because I had played with a lot of very, very well-known people at that point in time. But around
Is there an
here,
instant connection though with playing with
right
the
away.
band?
Michael knew some of the records I played on. He knew, because I mentioned some of the bands I'd been with. He went, oh. And so he knew the records I played on. So that's where, you know, he knew immediately. And more than that, I think what I would tell people is, when you've done something for a while, it's kind of like being a carpenter. When you're on a job site with a guy that's worked for a long time, you ask 3 questions, you know he knows what he's doing.
Right.
You don't have to mess with him. And that's the way it is with musicians too. If a guy's played big stages, if a guy's made records, if a guy's done that stuff, 2 or 3 questions, you can pretty much tell, does he know what he's doing?
Yeah.
And that's the way it was with me and Michael.
So you're leaving the house, you're headed to the Odeon. Are you freaking out in the car? Or are you
So
one of those
what I did at that gig, and I'll never forget, is I'm leaving the house to do the Odeon gig, and I pulled out really too fast and ripped off the side view mirror of my car. Because I was all nervous and stuff.
Wow.
Right? And my wife at the time came out and did the And I'm like, ah. But I remember for the
Somebody
rehearsal.
put that tree in our driveway.
For the rehearsal, I took like 6 amps and 10 guitars. I'm like, I didn't know what I was supposed to play. And it worked out that, he was just, but what I remember about doing the Odeon show is that we were standing in the dark and they put the screen down where they were doing the retrospect, because this was Michael coming back now with his solo career.
Yes,
right?
yes.
He was playing again. So Simzik was there, Jane Scott was there, there was a big thing deal. And I'm standing on this dark stage that's lit only by the lights of the amplifiers. And I'm sitting there going, how did I get here? And Palander saw it, and he looked at me and said, just relax, man. And so I've thanked Bob for that 100 times, because I was like, what's happening here?
Did you have a surreal moment on stage that day?
I mean,
what was the whole experience?
There were so many surreal moments playing with Michael. I mean, when we played with the Eagles, when we play, 16, 20,000 people, it became so commonplace.
Yeah.
To have those moments where we would walk out and go, oh, we get to do this today,
Yeah.
And through the ups and downs and trials and tribulations of your personal life, there was always that anchor of being in that band.
My last question before we take a quick break.
Mm-hmm.
Did Michael say anything to you at all after the Odeon show? Were you backstage? Did he say anything to you?
Nice job, dude.
That's it?
Yeah, nice job, dude. That's all you ever.
But that had to be enough for you, right? At that point?
I mean, it was like one thing that Michael always did, which was a classy act, is he would give you your pay envelope before you went on.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So you see those pictures of us, most of us have in our back left pocket have a check. Right? And you never really knew, I mean, you always were paid very well.
Yeah,
They always paid you very well. But you never knew if it was like, is it good or is it like really good?
Right.
So you'd be sitting there, you'd be sitting there with this check in your back pocket for the whole show going, and then of course when there would be a break, I'll always be over in the corner going, oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he
well,
treated us very
at least some guys, they get that check in their back pocket and they go, oh man, is this my walking check?
No.
Should he have given this to me afterwards?
But what Michael would always do is, no matter what time he got home at night, he would send us an email.
Wow.
Saying, hey guys, great job, Reso-Rooters, Resonators, Resurrection Boy, whatever. He would do something on the resume, but he would always tell us, nice job, you guys.
That's awesome.
Nice job.
We're going to take a quick break and come back and get into some more personal stuff with you and Michael and some of the things that you have been going on. So we'll be right back.
Cool.